This is the Super Rad BMX Podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising Cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilithora.
Hey everyone, welcome. This is episode number 3 of the Super Rad BMX Podcast, and we are so excited that we've actually made it to episode 3. And, I've got to include a little bit of something that I do on all my other podcasts, and I'm going to change it up a little bit, but welcome to the BMX party, pal. So it's just a little thing that I do. And I wanted to bring it in, but welcome everybody for coming back and joining us once again. I'm Brad Fanshaw, and with me is...
Hey, I'm Tim Lilithora. Welcome aboard.
Man, we are so happy that you are starting to look at Super Rad BMX as your source for old school, new school, mid school, freestyle. How about freestyle, not free school? Hey, man, we even created a new sport right here. So it's, but it's fun. It's everything we want you to get, and we're going to take you behind the scenes. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, this is our 3rd episode. We had Mike Miranda on last week. There's my dogs in the background.
Part of the podcast world.
I've been really looking forward to this episode with Bill Ryan. He's got so many cool products over the years, so many cool things to say, and I'm ready to go, man.
That's right. We got a great guest tonight. Before we get to him, we want to do a few little bit of housekeeping. We want to remind you to please go to our Instagram page and follow us at Super Rad BMX. Man, we have been super happy to see how many people have been already going there. I mean, we're like a week old, and we already have quite a number of people. Thank you very much. And Radmatic on YouTube is where you're watching us. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a great comment. And at the end of the show, we're going to tell you how you can win something for leaving us a great comment. Now, we'd hope you'd just leave it anyway, but it's kind of like a reward. So before we get going, we've got something because, if you look at Tim's channel, Radmatic, you see on there, he's restoring a lot of cool bikes. He's got his Yamaha motorbike. He's got his Webco. And Tim, you promised to give us one cool tip that everybody could use when they're restoring their old school BMX bikes.
Yeah. So I was thinking about just an easy tip could be, everyone has rusty parts, rusty cranks.
I know I do.
Wheel. And, there are a lot of different ways for removing rust. Some people use Coca-Cola. Some people use tin foil. There's a lot of home hacks that work. If you go on and you Google on YouTube, there's lots of great videos about the product that's generically known as oxalic acid. And oxalic acid is also called wood bleach. And you got to be a little careful with it. Wear gloves, face mask. I don't always wear a face mask, but you probably want to protect your eyes. And it's a little bit of a patience game. You have to, I have a trash barrel over here that I fill up about a quarter of the way full, and I just dip the wheels and everything with the spokes and the hubs. Generally, I take the hubs apart, take the bearings and axles out, coaster brake or whatever. But if you let that set overnight, basically that rust just melts off, and you can wipe it off with a rag, use chrome polish. And that's what I did on my Yamaha motorbike here when I restored it. And, some parts of the wheels were pretty bad, and it's missing the chrome in a few spots, but,
I think that gives it a little of the patina, though, rather than an over-restored bike. And I've seen that bike in person, and it looks dynamite for having not been replated, Tim. It looks cool.
Yeah, so that's my quick tip of the week.
Cool. And one more time, what's it called?
Well, it's called oxalic acid, and you can get it at the hardware store in powder form. You
Okay.
can also buy, like Lowe's has their own brand. It's also called wood bleach. But if you look closely at the label, it'll also, in small print, it'll say oxalic acid. So,
Cool. All right. And that is our hot tip for the week. And now let's get into our guest because he's been waiting patiently, sitting there going, okay, what about this oxalic acid? I mean, come on. I didn't know I was going to find out about chemicals.
He already
Hey,
knows.
welcome to the Super Rad BMX Podcast. Bill from Supercross BMX, from Torker, from Max, and a bunch of stuff I know I'm forgetting, but this guy has just taken BMX and in the last 35 years with so much enthusiasm and so much just looking at it with this wide lens. I'm so impressed, Bill, at how you've looked at BMX, not just from this, okay, we're going to become the new school guys and build these, but you keep building on it. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Brad. I really appreciate you having us on. Sorry for the little flub right there. It's been a long day here in the shop already. But no, I appreciate that intro. It's been a fun 35 years with Supercross and a fun 12 years prior to that in the industry, and looking forward to the next 20, 30, 40 years ahead, which I hope I've got 20, 30, 40 years ahead, you know.
All
we'll see how it goes. You know?
You're still a young man.
But the thing is that Supercross has done so much for the sport, for the riders, and it's evident in the awards that you've received, and just looking at the company. But when you came out with Torker, and I was able to go over to the booth at the DirtyFest and see what you guys were doing, I was very personally excited. And Tim's going to tell you about this because Tim and I are Torker diehards. Tim, I'll let you tell them about this.
Well, okay. So I have some show and tell.
Yeah,
and
please.
I thought I would do this, introduce my show and tell for this episode. So first of all, I saw the Torker test in the 1978 BMX Action Magazine.
Okay.
And here it is.
Yep.
And that, like, I was obsessed with Torker. I had to get one as soon as they were available. I got a candy red one, just like the one that was in the, just like that one, the one that was in the magazine.
Right.
And then Brad went out and got a candy blue one.
Yes, I did.
And then here's my bike.
Can you move the trophy so we can see the bike a little better, please?
Yeah, let me move the trophy.
A little AI editing right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, no, I mean, my dog's going wild upstairs. I'm sure you can hear it. It's like horses are galloping above my... Okay,
Can't
good.
even hear him.
So what happened next? Well, first, let me show you this. This is the center spread of that test in BMX Action.
Let me interrupt for 1 second, Tim, because this, Bill, as you know, because you were a racer rider at this time, when this came out, and we know the power of the press, and it's not just what influenced Tim and I for a particular bike, but where our careers would go and where we would be coming up. We'd later become editors of, the magazines and the newspapers at ABA, because
very aware.
We realized that the magazines held such a magic wand of telling the story of what we might want in the future. And this is just evidence of that. I'm sorry, Tim.
No, it's okay. I was going to read the sub. Okay. It's the Husqvarna of motocross bicycles. Torker MX, booking on a bike, basically befitting bigger BMX bozos.
Yeah.
And that just resonated with me, man. I had to have one of those.
And booking, that was a term I haven't used in a long time, but we used all the time back then.
Oh, all the time back then. I mean,
yes.
The language that we had back then, the lingo we had back then is so different than what we use nowadays, which is crazy. And now listening to the way that the new kids speak, I mean, we've had some of the riders in just the other day and listening to them with just their, oh, fire this and, you know, this, that. And it's just like, okay, I think I know what you're saying by just what I'm picking up, but, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's different.
Bill, I think this episode, Bill, Bill, will have to be hashtag booking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hashtag booking. Basically, bigger BMX bozos. Well, anyway, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but here are some pictures of us on our Torkers. Now, here in Nebraska, we were like a Torker. We were a mecca for Torkers, okay? We even had Doug Olson, who got sponsored by Torker.
Yep.
So that's me on a Torker. This is, remember Jerry Railsback from California? Jerry Railsback raced that Corona. He was on the California CRC club racing team. He moved to Nebraska. He came here on his Torker. That's me in the middle.
Lincoln.
What's that?
I said that was at Lincoln at Doug's track. Yeah.
At Lincoln Webster. I love this picture. And there's Doug Olson. And then here's Brad on his blue Torker at our local trails called Standard Trails.
That is awesome.
Here's Brad. I mean, I've got more Torker pictures than I have anything else. There's Brad on a downhill jump at our track, spinning spokes. And then a couple more.
Oh, you got more? This is awesome.
Hey, I prepared for this.
Yes.
So there's a dude named Larry Woodruff on his blue Torker. He's from Lincoln. Rad rider.
Torker territory, man.
Everywhere. And there's Doug Olson flying up in the air high. He jumped higher than all of us. And what else do I have?
Looking at that picture now, it makes me understand why he told me he built the frame that had the 24-inch long top tube.
Yes. He was a big guy. Back when we were kids, he was big, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, at DirtyFest, he and I got to hang out and talk a lot. And he was like, Bill, he goes, I did a little bit of research. And he goes, you know, your Pro XL, along with the free agent limo, was some of the first frames that had top tubes over 21 inches. And I said, well, you know, there was us, there was free agent, you know, Elf, S&M. I go, there was a bunch of us at the time. And he goes,
right.
I built a 24-inch top tube Torker. And I was like, you're crazy. I go, why would you go that long? I go, we don't even go that long nowadays for all these guys going down the big Supercross hills. And he's like, it felt right. And he goes, I just did it and it felt right. And that's the bike that I went to college with. And that's just the bike that I enjoyed. And looking at that picture makes a lot of sense.
Well, look at this one. Hang on. Look at this one. This shows you how tall, how big he looked on that little bike. And that was a big bike. And he's a giant on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then one last picture is Doug Olson and Jerry Railsback. Now, Mike Miranda knows Jerry Railsback, and so does a lot of guys that raced in Riverside. And he was a cool dude. He moved to Omaha, or he moved to Peru, Nebraska. I think his dad
I was going to say, like an outlying
teacher.
area, right?
Yeah. But yeah, we were a Torker town, man.
No doubt about it.
Since we're not skipping over Supercross BMX, but since we're here and we're talking about it, and Torker always and still does put such a big smile on our face.
Oh,
how did that happen, Bill? How did you become the guy with Torker?
Total fluke. Be real honest. As a kid, I was working at SE, and I'd always wanted Scott to sponsor me. I always wanted to be a part of SE's crew. And I'll be real honest. When I was a racer back in the day, I sucked. I mean, if I got 5th in the semi, I was partying, right? That was the great time. And Scott would always be like, not yet, Billy, not yet, Billy, not yet, Billy. So I had applied for a co-sponsorship with Torker because that was my next favorite brand. So flash forward many years later, when Redline was up for sale and we were in the middle of negotiating, trying to buy Redline. They had been sitting on Torker for a long time. And
That's right.
I had said, hey, guess what? We're going to continue on with this Redline deal, but I want Torker tossed in as part of the deal. And they're like, why? And I'm like, it doesn't matter why. I want Torker tossed in as part of the deal. And to me, it had a sentimental reason, because, hey, they co-sponsored me. I broke a lot of their frames back in the day. The reason that I actually welded my first frame was because I broke so many Torkers. But I loved the brand. I loved what they were trying to put out. The Johnson family was always so kind. The riders were always so nice. And it was just something that I wanted to become the caretaker of, to bring it back to what its original roots were. I didn't like what they had done to it, to where it was unicycles and scooters and,
Right.
cargo
I always thought that
bikes.
was strange.
Yeah, it just became a brand name to them. They had no love for it. There was no heart in it. There was no soul in it. And I was just like, hey, toss it in and we'll see. So after a couple years of negotiating, things kind of fell through. I mean, they wanted way too much money for Redline. The debt to asset ratio was just not there. Things just didn't work. The balance sheets were just wrong. And I had actually worked with a couple of other people in the industry to where we were going to try and create what was going to become the new firm, to merge a couple other larger companies together and try and do some cool things. But the Redline part just never really worked right. And Eddie King, Mike Miranda, Eddie Fiola, they knew what was going on and they knew what I was trying to do. And then I ended up going in for a heart surgery and I had a minor stroke and some different things. And I let it sit. And, I came back around to it and said, hey, here's what we want to try and do. And they're like, well, we can do it for this number. And the numbers still didn't line up. And finally, after 9 years, we got to the right people and they said, look, we've already sold off this asset. We've already sold off this asset. We're down to this. Give us X amount of dollars and we'll call it a day and it's done. And I was like, huh? And they're like, yep, can you do this today? And it's like, yeah. Called my lawyer and got it all set up and did what they had asked and made the whole thing start to happen. And unfortunately, after that, we ended up having them come back after us because, come to find out, the parent company over in the Netherlands had said, oh no, we didn't give authorization for that. The people who did that said that wasn't right. And we had a little Zoom meeting and they're like, you know what? We think that Torker is worth $1 million. We've done a little bit of research on your company and it's worth $1 million. And I was like, well, you can get, and my lawyer's like, oh, Bill, please get off the call right now. We'll handle it right now. And, and after that, we let it sit for another 18 months while the lawyers worked everything out. And all of a sudden, they said, hey, here you go. Here's the trademarks. Here's the registrations. You're registered and trademarked in Australia, the EU, the UK, North America. Everything's all good. And I was like, okay, well, before I do anything, I want to get a hold of the Johnson family. And Eddie King had contact with the Johnson family still. And he put me in contact with Evan, which was Steve's son. And we had a long conversation. He ended up flying out to the Winter Nationals and saw the way that we run our team and the way that we do our program. And he was like, hey, you've 100% got my blessing. Whatever you want to do, this is going to be awesome. I love what you're trying to do and how you're trying to take it back to the roots and how you want to celebrate the riders and celebrate what the history was and celebrate the origin story of BMX and how we got to where we're at. And then he put me in touch with his uncle, Doug, who ran Max, which was Steve's little brother. And he and I ended up having a 2-hour-long phone conversation. And he was like, Bill, you've 100% got my blessing. He goes, I've got one question. Can I come see you? Can I come see DirtyFest? Can I come see what it's about? And I'm like, oh, please come on down. I want you to be a part of it. And him and his wife came down and had an amazing time. And Eddie put it all together to, you know, try and get everybody out there. So, you know, Doug came out, Mike Aguilera came out, Jason Jensen came out, Kathy Anna came out. I mean, I called Clint Miller because Clint and I had been friends for years. I'm like, Clint, you got to come out. And he's like, nobody cares about me. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Everybody cares about you. You've got to come on out. And Tommy Bracken, obviously, and Miranda, obviously. And I called up Diesel, you know, Matt Hayden. I'm like, Matt, you got to come out, you know. And he's like, Bill, nobody cares about me. And I'm like, come on, man, we got to do this. This is going to be the celebration. And that's what I want to try and do, because back in the day when I was a little kid and when I was growing up, just like you guys said that Torker was something that you looked up to, when I was a little kid growing up, there were two brands I looked up to. There was SE and there was Torker. And I was blessed and fortunate enough to have Scott Bryhop help me and mentor me, gave me a job at 12 years old, sweeping the floors, boxing up frames, stickering frames, you know, being a part of it. And I always wanted to ride for SE. And he was like, oh, Billy, when you get a little bit better, Because honestly, I sucked. I enjoyed riding. I really did. I loved going to the track. I enjoyed riding. But I was spending more time sweeping the track and grooming the track to pay for my race fees and pay for my practice fees rather than practicing, because I was a latchkey kid, single mom, you know, dad wasn't around, so we didn't have any money, and I just enjoyed to ride. And I spent more time at the trails riding, and Torker was the other brand. So when I applied for the co-sponsorship over there, I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So when it came around for this to happen, it's like, okay, cool. You know, let's be the caretaker for a little bit. You know, I'm not saying it's going to be our brand forever, because I don't think any brand is anybody's forever, but let's try and be the caretaker and try and make it be the best generation of it that we can possibly make it be, and bring the roots of it forward and pay homage to the riders and the people that were a part of it, and give it some new legs and give it some new life for the new generation.
Well, Bill,
Yeah, those bikes are cool. Those bikes are so cool. I saw them at DirtyFest, man, and I noticed on the website all the sizes I would have been interested in, or, you know, the cruisers are sold out. But that's good.
I was actually really surprised. I was truly surprised. We took a gamble and we built 350 frames. And I was like, okay, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's do it right. Let's try and make it happen. We built 350 frames. My son, Tucker, him and his fiance, Kayla, they were here working at the office for me while I was down there at DirtyFest. And the first day that we opened it up for everything to go, I don't think we were 10 minutes in, and he called me and he's like, Dad, this one's already sold out. 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 And I'm like, what? And I actually had some people come up to me at DirtyFest and get in my face. And they're like, hey, I wanted this, and this is bullshit. And excuse my language, you know,
right,
and they were getting mad, and they were wanting to actually blows over the fact that they couldn't get the one that they wanted. And
Jeez.
hey, I'm sorry, we're doing more, and we're doing some really cool limited runs, and we're doing some really cool limited production stuff, because we want to make sure that everybody's got something cool out of this, to where if you miss the first runs and the first productions, this next production run, there's going to be some even cooler things. And I hate to say even cooler things, but the candy reds, the candy blues.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Now you
nice.
got us excited.
Yeah, man.
Well, Bob Harrow is wanting to be involved with everything again. Dave Marietti's wanting to be involved. A lot of people who were sitting on the fence watching were like, we're not sure how this is going to go. We're going to kind of wait and see. All of a sudden they're like, hey, how can I be a part of this? What can I do to be a part of this? And
Well, that's why I have so many pictures here. It's all leading into how can I be a
yeah, there you go.
Oh, here we go. Is this the will you sponsor me
The
part?
Nebraska distribution.
I need a bro deal, man.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Uh-oh.
we get hit up with that all the
Yeah,
time.
now we're gonna bring in Greg into the message here. So, hey, but you know what? What is so special about this is that you did it in such a special way, and you've just described this. That you didn't just label some frames and say, "Hey, here's a repop of the frames." You included the people that helped make those frames special. You included the people that we saw racing either beside us on the gate or in the magazines, all those things. It was all those things that as a kid, we just desired, and we grew up alongside and actually racing on it. And that's what's so special. And that is so cool that you did that. But it goes back farther. And it really, something that you mentioned that just resonates with old school BMX is that what I wish we still had was a track in every community. And even more so, riding trails and that empty lot with the jumps where all the kids congregate. Because I can say, I've told this story many times with my business, Bond Speed Media. I've sat in a lot of studios, pitching TV shows and film, and been with musicians and stuff. And I sat in one particular meeting that kind of encompasses a lot of my meetings, but this one was really special. This guy was a jerk. He was in his suit and tie. He thought he was he was the top dog, but he just acted the part. He was the studio exec. And I don't even remember how it came around, but I mentioned something about Vision Streetwear. And he went, Vision Streetwear? I go, yeah, I was a big part of that company. And he goes, really? He goes, yeah, I remember Vision. But he hadn't quite jumped out of his suit yet. And I said, well, I came there because of my involvement of BMX, Racing Pro, and working with the ABA. All of a sudden, this guy literally melted, became the nicest guy. And you saw him become a kid again. Oh, man.
So
started talking about all the pros, started talking about BMX Action and all of the things that made him who he was. And that is what BMX means to so many people. And you bringing back Torker brings back that element. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Yes.
It's a big deal. It's probably a bigger deal than you even thought it was when you started it. But I can see it's a big deal.
Well,
I've got my DirtyFest Torker poster in the other room with everyone signed, and
I didn't get
one either.
I didn't get one. I was so busy helping set up chairs and get everything done. I didn't get one.
Well, I have a buddy who gets everything signed. Like, I don't even have to go around and do it. He just goes over there. Anthony Chambers.
He just does it. Yeah.
But no, I mean, every city, every town, like this goes to kind of in conjunction with Brad's story about the CEO of the company who BMX brought all those great memories back to. Like, I'm sitting here in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, it's a relatively decent sized town, but not big by any stretch. There's collectors all over this town that, the chatter was about Torker. Oh, did you see they brought back Torker? I mean, that's going on in every town, every city. I mean, the collectors are talking about it. The old school guys are talking about it.
Well, Tim, let's get back to the candy blue one. I want to know more.
Yeah.
No,
well, okay. I don't want to interrupt Bill because he's going on it. I just want to make sure I get these other pictures in here.
Okay, Tim's got more fun. Oh, that's a classic right there.
Okay,
Eddie.
this is the BMX action with Eddie King. This is like 1980. This is now by
the
1980.
Eddie King cover one. Yep.
The Eddie King cover one. And then I printed out the spread, which was just an awesome picture. It's like there's no words. It says EK on an EK replica Torker.
Yeah.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, and you can tell because of the gusset on it. That was Eddie's gusset, right, Bill?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and so here's something that people aren't gonna, they'll see soon enough, but like on the EKs that we did a special EK gusset, and now the new LP frames that we're going to be doing have the LP gusset, because we actually went back, and people don't know, but those head tube gussets, there were 5 different variations of them. So
Wow.
the LP
I didn't know
has a little bit of a different gusset than the EK. So now while we're working on doing the LP frames, the top part of the gusset, it's a 1/2 inch longer. So it's a little bit more uniform, where the EK gusset, it's a 1/2 inch shorter. So the EK frame, it has its own special gusset, and we're making sure that, okay, those EK frames had that EK gusset. Now the LP frames are going to have the LP gusset. So that way, when people purchase their frames, they're going to have what's true to actual replica source for them.
Because a lot of guys a lot of guys know that stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not like that. I mean, I know a lot of things, but I don't know like how many inches the EK gusset was versus the LK gusset.
Right.
But so then, okay, just a couple more. This is then back by 1982. That's the Max Flight.
Correct.
And I don't know who
Look at
that
those
is.
pants.
That's Clint Miller.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
It's Clint Miller. Clint whipping it up. What does it say? Whipping it in powder. He's whipping it in powder, man.
Yep. And if you notice, that's the LP frame, to where the top of the gusset comes back just that little bit more compared to the EK one.
I'm going to believe you, Bill.
No, you can take a look at it.
I'm getting old. I can't read that from here. So.
All right. Okay. So then by 1982, I found another BMX action test, and that's the 280X.
Correct.
I don't know what the difference with the 280X was, but it says here it was more of an economical racer responding to an
right, and that was the LP frame just built up with a parts kit.
Yeah, okay. Different components, right? More affordable.
Different components.
Yeah. So it would have been the components like I'd have on my bike.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's the 280X, but it was the LP frame just built up with a parts component that was the 280X.
All right, that makes sense.
Well, I think we've established.
That's the end of my Torkers.
We have established that we're Torker freaks. We race Torkers. We won trophies on Torkers, and we love.
So.
I can't wait to hear. When will you be announcing these new releases?
This September. We're planning on releasing them all at the Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay.
Oh, very cool.
So it might be a little bit sooner. I was talking with Shannon yesterday, and we're trying to get some things done, because this year for the Hall of Fame, we were planning on trying to do a Supercross BMX 35-year anniversary.
Oh, that'd be
And
nice.
there's been a little bit of a leak that Vans and I have teamed up to do a 35-year Supercross BMX Vans shoe. And
awesome.
there's a couple little leaks around the internet that we haven't posted or shared or anything because we've been waiting for the official release. And we were planning on doing that at the Hall of Fame. And Damien's doing a really cool Radical Rick Supercross poster that's going to be a limited 35-year edition thing. And we figured,
Nice.
well, can't leave Torker out of the mix, and we might as well just announce the next run of frames there. So we'll have some pretty cool stuff. And while the first run was all chrome, and we were trying to do that to get around some of the stuff that's going on in the EU and the UK with the banishment on chrome, which I'm sure you know, Brad, with everything with bond speed. I mean, what a nightmare that's going to be. But we were trying to get around that and trying to get a little bit of an early jump on that. But also, Torkers were iconically known as being chrome bikes.
Sure, they were. Many of them.
We had a lot of people that were like, well, what about the candy reds? What about the candy blues? What about the blacks? And it's like, and even from Miranda and for Brackens, it was like, well, what about the white ones? And it's like, oh, yep, you guys are not wrong, and we've got it on the board, and we'll get that for you.
And that is a bullet point that I have on my sheet here is about manufacturing in California. We'll get to that later. But yeah, we both know that. But let's go back. Let's take a jump back here. You are like the opposite of what I was. I went from Southern California racing with Eddie, Wheels and Things, Coy Hudson, all the guys at Rancho. I rode side hacks with Scott Bryhop. We talked about that in a previous episode at Rancho. And then my dad comes home one day and says, you're moving to Nebraska. And that's when Tim and I met up. But you did just the opposite. You were in, where was it, Illinois?
Yeah, I was born in Bellwood, Illinois. And my mom and dad were a couple of hippies and moved us out here to Torrance. And not too long after we moved out here, my mom and dad got divorced. So single mom raising, me and my newborn sister. And my only escape at the time was riding my BMX bike. And my first BMX bike wasn't even a true BMX bike. It was a Gemco version of a Schwinn Stingray called a Flying O. And, put motocross handlebars on it, put knobby tires on it. And I used to go ride at this place called The Pits in Torrance. And The Pits was an old trash dump that they had filled in. And back then I was 7 years old. And all I knew is that, it was fun to go ride the dirt hills on my BMX bike, and it would help clear my mind. And, it gave me my little bit of freedom and my little bit of sanity. And there was always the older kids that were over there drinking and getting high and, hey, Billy, go try that jump, and if I could do the jump, then they would go and do the jump. Well, I was blessed that I met a lot of guys like Donnie Jones over there, the Emmerich brothers, because it was all part of Torrance. So I didn't know it back then, but, Ontradero Park was not that far from there. Ascot was not that far from there. Harbor was not that far from there. Alpine Village was not that far from there. But I didn't know it because I'm a little kid, and I just knew that the 2-mile ride to the pits was about as far as I was supposed to go, and that's what I would do. And my mom came home one day, and she had just started working for a company called Donnelly Publications.
Oh.
And she threw down a copy of BMX Action Magazine. And she's like, hey, there's a bunch of kids riding BMX bikes in here. I thought you might like it. And as I started flipping through, I'm noticing, I'm like, well, that's Donnie and that's Robert and that's, you know, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. These guys are in here and they've got number plates on their bikes and they're racing and they're doing things. And I think it was a month before I talked to any of them again, to where I'd show up and I'd just stare at them and I'd just stare at them and I'd stare at them. And every once in a while, Scott Bryhop would show up because Scott was trying to do some stuff with BMX Action Magazine and trying to get some stuff done. And this was just one of the local riding spots that was local. And he was like, hey, Billy, come here. You know, how much money you got in your pocket? And I thought I was going to get robbed because, you know, he's one of the older kids that was always over in the corner drinking and getting high. And I'm like, I don't know, $1. And he's like, well, you come see me when you got $5. And he ended up selling me one of his old FMF frames. And he's like, here,
really?
Go put this together before you break your neck. You
Wow.
know?
That's awesome.
Constantly breaking forks, breaking bars, breaking stems, breaking, you know, cranks, breaking anything that I could break on that damn Gemco fly, you know. I wish I still had it because it was, you know, part of my history, but that thing would fall apart if you looked at it wrong.
We tried doing things on those department store bikes that they were never intended for, and
Never intended for.
no, but we did it
Never
anyway,
intended
right?
for.
Yeah, mine was from Sears. Mine was from Sears, so it was probably like the same frame as your Gemco.
Yeah, probably exactly the same ones. And what
Yeah.
was funny is like Donnie Jones taught me how to play rooftop tag over at the local high school, to where we would throw our bikes up onto the roof of the school and you had to jump your bike from one roof to the other as you're playing tag, because the schools back then all had flat roofs, and you know, you'd ride around and you just jump, and it was only, you know, 3-foot gap, 4-foot gap, so it wasn't that big of a gap. And if you're going fast enough, I mean, it's a quick little bunny hop and you're going. As a little kid, it scares the crap out of you the first time you do it, but that was part
I'm
of
not sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know what though? That brings up a point. It's the things we did as kids. And I know every generation, you know, the old guys are always out when we were kids. But the thing is that we all hung out at the elementary school and the high school because they had all those outdoor corridors. You know, when I grew up, you know, and you say rooftop tag, but we used to chase each other down, you know, and we'd power slide around the corners and everything. Now all the schools are locked up tight. You can't even get to them. And it's like they just sit vacant when there's not school going on, you know?
Yes. Well, and the bike racks are empty even when school's going on. That's the biggest part that I always complain about, is that if you drive by any of the schools at any given time anymore, all the bike racks are completely empty. No one, everybody's too much of a helicopter parent. No one lets their kids ride their bikes to school anymore. The parents are driving them. They're all taking a bus. You know, you don't get to have the freedom that we used to have. And
Our
and
parents
that's
had
honestly
no
what it
idea.
was. Pardon?
Yeah, our parents had no idea where we were.
Oh, they didn't
We could
care.
have been 20 miles away on our bikes. They would
Or
have.
how far away we rode, man. I mean, it was like crazy, you know?
Yeah, they didn't care. I mean, we're stealing strawberries from the strawberry field, having buckshot shot at us for stealing the strawberries, and finding whatever hose we could to drink out of. And, you know, that was just whatever we would do on a Saturday afternoon. It was just what we did.
So you
Bring back
take
that
the next
time.
Now
We should all get together and do that. We should all get together and just go right around neighborhoods and drink out of hoses again.
drink out of hoses and steal our parents' lawn tools so we can go build some jumps in a field, you know?
Yeah, imagine the looks we'd get nowadays. People would be like, what are...
They're burying a body out there. I know it. Let's call the cops.
Hey, Super Rad BMX fans. Coming up in part 2 of our interview with BMX legend Bill Ryan, we dive deeper into the exciting world of Supercross BMX. Bill shares insider stories about the brand's evolution, groundbreaking innovations, and what's next on the horizon. If you thought Part 1 was rad, just wait. Part 2 is packed with even more BMX gold. Don't miss out.
This is the Super Rad BMX Podcast. Down the first straight is the cruising Cornhusker over the jump bonsai Brad. Now your host Brad Fanshaw and Tim Lilladora.
Get ready to represent the Super Rad BMX Podcast in style with these rad BMX t-shirts. They're perfect for listening to your favorite Super Rad BMX Podcast episodes, hitting the track, or cruising around town, and showing off your passion for BMX culture. Join the Super Rad BMX community and showcase your love for this podcast with these awesome vintage BMX t-shirts. Order yours today on radmatic.com and ride in style.